Hello and welcome back. This is another edition of the Blueprints and Bankroll series with my lovely host, Brandon. Say hi, Brandon.
Good morning.
We are going to talk about Google reviews, finding the right professional, how to find them, where to find them, all that fun stuff. Brandon and I were chatting about, where do we get most of our clients from? And it's mainly from my side on the lending is referrals from partners, from real estate, from financial planners, from CPAs, past clients that call that, need my services for financing. But Brandon, where are you finding that you're getting most of your clients from?
Yeah, I would say 99% of all of our clients that come in contact with us or leads are all referral based. Only a select few find us on Google. So yeah, referrals are the best way to go.
Okay.
So yeah, it's good or bad, right? So, if you do your local, the pros are you get somebody within your area, most
Right.
likely within, 10 miles of your home, depending on your Google range or whatever it is. Yelp, it could be Yelp. We're not biased here.
Have you been on Yelp lately? When's the last time you've been on Yelp?
Yeah, I don't do Yelp. Yeah,
Okay.
we don't like Yelp. The thing about finding just a local person is that you might not find the expert you need, right? If you're
Right.
just looking for, a fence to be installed, local guy, local company is great. If you're looking for a design build, a luxury contractor, you may have to go out 15 miles and you're probably gonna have to get on their waiting list. They can't just help you, right? Same thing with the lender on your side, most likely, is you gotta find somebody maybe not in your backyard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're a client that wants to put $150,000 addition onto your home, you don't want the cheapest guy that's the closest. You want a professional that's within your market or within your area, but you also want to have somebody that's highly rated, that knows what they're doing, that's a professional. The great thing that I like about working with you, Brandon, is, you are extremely diligent. You're extremely trustworthy. Most of your business comes from repeat and referrals. Yes, you get some Google reviews and some Google, searches where people are wanting to, inquire about services. That's the cool thing about having a ton of experience and worked with, on my side, I've worked with thousands of clients over the last 20 plus years. The great thing is that, experience does matter when you're talking about finances and, taking out loans and borrowing money. And you got to figure out, my job is to get you out of debt. That's the other thing is a lot of people think, when they get a mortgage, it's about finding a great rate and a great, lower interest rate and all that fun stuff, which I totally agree. But it's also my job, I think, as a wealth advisor in general, is to look for ways to get you out of debt the fastest way possible. And there's multiple ways to do that. So that's why you definitely want to meet with somebody that's not just, here's your rate. Here's your rate. You want low rate, low rate, low rate. Well, maybe that doesn't make sense in your situation. There's tons of opportunity and tons of different options as far as financing, home equity lines of credit, taking out a mortgage or taking out cash against your house. You need to look at tax implications. Sometimes when you take out money from a 401k or you move money around, it could create a tax consequence. So you want to make sure that you surround yourself with professionals that know what to look for, know the questions to ask, and are not just out there to just give you the lowest, cheapest rate in town, when at the end of the day, that may actually end up biting you in the butt in the back end. What do you think about that, Brenna?
No, I totally agree. Yeah, you gotta have a team, right? And a loan officer and a builder, it's not the end of your team. You're gonna need a CPA as well, right? So you're gonna need multiple people to get in there to help you double check what your other team members are saying, right? Jared, you're great. Brandon, I'm great. As a builder, but hey, we gotta have somebody else. Hey, no, this law came out. 1031 exchange. How does that work, right?
Yeah.
But just invest in your team. I guess a top thing would say, hey, if you're gonna do Google, make sure you look at their Google reviews, ask for 3 references, one from a year ago, and then one during a current project now that they're actually working on, and then one from a project 3 months ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing is, a lot of people say, well, I want cheap. Well, do you want a cheap bathroom? Do you want a cheap kitchen? Do you want cheap, like cost cheap, or do you want, quality? One thing about, your home, if it's a rental property and you're looking to flip it, meaning you want to purchase a property, you want to do a renovation, and then you want to immediately turn around and sell it. Well, maybe you can go a slightly less fancy, materials, or what I mean by that is like lighting. You want to go look, basics. But if it's your primary home where you sleep at night, and you want to look at, something that's comfortable, but it's affordable, but it's also on the in general, depending on what part of the house. But you also want to look at quality finishes so that it's something that's going to last a while, that you don't have to replace in a couple of years. So that's the other thing, is to, know what this money is being used for, and make sure that it's going to, give you the best opportunity to get a return on investment. That's the other thing, is a lot of people say, oh, I just want to go the cheap, 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 cheap. Well, I've read a ton of articles recently, and I get a lot of feedback from my clients where, kitchens, the amount of money that you spend on a kitchen and a bathroom significantly improves the value of the house. So that if you do plan on selling it in the near future, that you want to make sure that it looks great, the materials are quality, so that when you go to list your house, you get the most money you can, because that's where people spend most of their time. So
Yeah, I agree. And like, even if you have a rental property, we run into this to people who call us. We usually don't work with them because they're looking for a very low cost. But if I have a rental property, we need durable quality material. So when that renter, which typically they do, use the house a little harder than we would on our own home because you're
Sure.
renting.
yeah,
When they leave and you go in to freshen up the place, you don't have to replace the cheapo cabinets, right? Maybe you have to refinish, sand, refinish, get them all up to par. But if you use like laminate countertops that are chipping and pilling, you have to pull out the countertops, you have to reset the sinks, you have to get all, like, it's a mess, right? So use a hard countertop, a quartz or similar, and that way it holds up to the time. One thing I thought of as we're communicating about people that want cheap, right? Now, I'm not saying cost effective. Cost effective is great. Cheap doesn't help anybody. Now, the people that usually want cheap don't want to do permits. How does that affect? Like, let's say I do a renovation on my home and I don't use probably a licensed contractor, and I don't get permits. How does that affect when you go to get a loan, or somebody goes to you and says, "Hey, I need a loan for this house," and you're like, "Wait, where'd this come from? It's not in the docs." How does that? Is that negative?
Great question. So a lot of times I'll come across where somebody's trying to pull out cash, or we need to do an appraisal on the property. Whenever you borrow money, the bank or the lender will require an appraisal to come out, an appraisal to be done on the property, which means a local appraiser that knows the area and the market will come to your home. They will take pictures. They're going to look at county records. They're going to make sure that, hey, you're telling me that you have a 2,800 square foot, but guess what? County record says 2,300. Well, yeah, we did this 500 square foot addition a couple years back. Well, there's no records. So we can't, the bank and the lender won't give you that square footage. Also, if the work that was done was not done by a licensed contractor and the permits weren't pulled and the county finds out, what happens when the county finds out that permits weren't done on work that was completed on a property? I believe they call that red tag.
That's right.
The red tag. We don't like the red tags. Tell me what that looks like.
Yeah. So if you get red tagged and the home is already done, the inspector, one, you have to get your plans, for all your plans, your as-built, get it all. If you did an addition, get the engineering done, your additional cost there. You have to submit that, go through the process, and they may make you open up your walls. They may make you tear your finishes out that you try to save money on. Now you're spending twice as much, and you can't use the original contractor because you didn't use a contractor. You used Chuck in a truck and had a dog with him, So,
Chuck in a truck, I like that.
Yeah. So if you try to save money in that way, you could spend 2.5 times the value.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Plus the city's going to be all over you.
Right.
The county.
How will the city or the county find out that work was done? Like, they get tips, and like I said, as the lender, we don't notify anybody like, oh my God, there's a 300 square foot addition that wasn't permitted. We never do that. But where are you finding that you've seen where the county inspector or they come out and they say, wait a minute, there's no permits. You got a brand new addition here that we have no record of. How does that come into play? Tell me about that. Or tell friends and family what that's all about.
I think 90% of it is the neighbors complaining. They say, hey, there's a lot of noise going on here. Maybe they're doing night work and they're not allowed to. Some cities are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday. Some cities are 8 a.m. start and 10 a.m. start on Saturday and Sunday. Just depends. So if you get a neighbor, and you just may get somebody that's, doesn't like weird trucks in their neighborhood. So they're going to call, hey, what's going on? In most cities, you have to paste your permit, a piece of paper on your window and a place where people can drive by and see. So that, hey, an inspector can look, hey, there's a permit there. We're good. We can drive on. I guess the other 10% would be if the inspector just drives by I've had a contractor that I know that didn't pull permits, and they were like in a close city in Santa Cruz. Inspector drives by and they go, "Hey, Brandon, we got red tag. Can you help us pull these, like, draw the plan sets and pull permits?" You know, yeah, but it's going to
So,
cost you,
yeah.
right?
So
And
the project's halted, you got to stop, you got to, it's literally almost like a control delete. You got to completely stop what you're doing, which takes more time. And as far as I know that, your build and you charge based on time. Time is money. The old adage. You gotta just do it right the first time. That way there's no issues. Tell me about the difference between red tagging, like somebody wants to add an addition to the home, a second story, an extra bedroom, things like that, versus like a pergola or some kind of an building or something that's attached to the house. Is there a big difference in that?
permitting wise,
Yeah, for pulling permits.
oh yeah. So an outdoor structure is easier, right?
Yeah.
When you start adding the living space, a conditioned space, we got more items: mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural issues, egress, window heights, or people escaping it during.
That's a great. I love these vocabs. What is
Egress
egress? What does that mean?
is a way to escape the building
Right.
in your bedroom or living quarters. So every living quarters will have an egress, like the window needs to be certain heights from the floor. And that way, during a fire, the people in the bedroom can get out.
Right.
Right. So you have to have a certain square inch opening. I don't want to get too in detail. But yeah, so I want to circle back on the non-permits. If the client finds a contractor that is willing to do something without a permit, that's not your contractor. I walk away from people all the time because they're not doing it right. So if
They're skating the system.
I'm a true professional, I have my license with the state of California, I have all my insurances, I have my employees.
Yep.
There is no reason for me to cut corners and when
Right.
I'm supposed to be working here for the next 30 years.
Right.
You're one
So
client.
you're licensed and bonded. That way, if there's an accident on the job, nobody's, you've got all that coverage. You've got the securities and the policies and the checklists, and you've got all of those things in place. So that way, when and if something does happen, because it will, just will, that's called life. You're protected, that your homeowners are protected, your clients are protected. That way, there's just no drama. Nobody likes drama, except my wife when she watches her shows at Love Island and things like that. I'm kidding.
Oh, that's a good one.
What are your other challenges that you're seeing right now with clients wanting to, everybody wants to save a buck. I get it. Everybody wants the lowest rate, the lowest payment. I got that. That's cool. Everybody wants, oh, that's too much. That's the first thing is present a project and you give them a price and you give them a proposal and these are all the options. What do? They're like, holy Christ, how am I going to pay for this? So I get it. And I get that all the time. The other cool thing is that you need to explain yourself, and I think you do an amazing job of explaining line by line. Here's what to expect. A lot of people go into this and they're like, oh, it should only be like 40 or 50 grand. Okay, you're adding 400 square feet. You're doing this, you're doing that. You're adding these materials. Those things cost money. Here's a line by line item. I get the same thing on the lending side where, hey, Jared, what's your lowest rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage? Do you know what I say?
It depends on your situation.
Depends on your situation. I don't know. Let's find out if that makes sense. Let's make sure that, we go into a detailed process and I go through a checklist and I make sure that I don't put somebody in a 30-year mortgage that's going to move in 3 years. I don't have somebody pay a bunch of closing costs up front when they're going to turn around and flip and sell the house in a year. It doesn't make any sense. I purposely put people in slightly higher interest rates with less closing costs if I know they're going to get out of that loan or that house in the next short period, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. I had somebody pay a 0.5% higher in rate, but it ended up saving them about $7,000, but it made sense. Their payment was $150 more per month, but it saved them $7,000 because they're selling the house in a year. Doesn't make sense to throw money at a problem. That's the other thing is, people wanting to just throw money at the issue because rates are high right now. They're at a 25 plus year high. Got it. Crystal clear. It is.
Even though the rates are high, isn't there a higher than they were, 2 years ago or whatnot? Yeah. They get to write off that interest, correct?
So yes, typically up to the first $750,000 of your primary home, you can write off the mortgage interest. Again, that's where you want to check with your CPA. Every situation is individual. Every situation is a snowflake. So there's no two people that are alike. If it's a second home, is it an investment property? There's all kinds of cross segregation analysis that you can do if you're buying a rental property. You mentioned earlier, Brandon, about a 1031 exchange. Just so people kind of get an idea of what that means is, let's say 10 years ago, you bought a rental property. Now you've decided to sell it. So let's say you bought that rental property at 300,000 and now you sold it at 500,000. Okay. You have a $200,000 appreciation in that home. So if you were to take that $200,000 and put it in your bank and go on vacation and pay off debt and all that fun stuff, guess what? You're going to have a tax consequence on that money. Okay. You're going to have a $200,000, not exactly 200,000, but you're going to have to pay tax on that improvement or that gain. It's called capital gains. But if you take that $200,000 and you 1031 exchange it, which is basically you're taking money from one rental property and putting it into another, it shields you from that tax consequence in that year. Long story short is you have 6 months from the time that you sell a property to identify another rental property. I had a client just recently. She's been a long-term client. She bought a property like 15 years ago, sold it, had like $500,000, of net proceeds. She took that and bought a condo in Hawaii. She's got the condo in Hawaii. Now she's cash flowing on that. So again, you need to know that if and when you do certain things, it does create potential tax consequences. So you need to work with true professionals that know what they're doing, that know how to get you in front of people to always look for strategies on saving money, lowering taxes, and paying the least amount, period.
That's awesome. Hey, so real quick, being a veteran, right, myself, I wanted to ask, a specific, all the veterans, the men and women out there that are wanting to get their first home and live in it. What do they do? Like, how do they get there in a simple term? Like, let's give them like a 3-minute, like, how do I get my first home for my family as a veteran?
Well, first off, I would say thank you again for your service. Veteran loans, I love doing. I've done hundreds and hundreds of veterans loans over the last 20 years. Very simply, if you're a veteran and you have a copy of your DD 214, which every veteran knows what that is, you present that or you give that to your lender and you say, look, I'm a veteran. Here's my DD 214. We will review your cash, your credit, and your income to determine what you qualify for. The other great thing with VA loans is that they're 100% financing. So if you found a house at 3, 4, 5, 600, I've done $1 million VA loan. Depends on the situation, depends on the area. If you're buying a house in downtown, not downtown, but if you're buying a house in San Francisco versus Meridian, Idaho, that's a different story. But essentially, it's 100% financing. So let's say you buy a house, it's 300,000. You don't have to put any money down. We can actually get the seller to pay all of your closing costs. I've had VA buyers purchase houses for less than $2,500 down total. Okay. What we do is we structure the loan. Okay. We set up and we have a strategy in place to basically say, hey, I like your house. Here's my offer. I would also like a credit from you in order for me to pay my closing costs. So essentially, your only out-of-pocket expense is really going to be for an appraisal fee, which is maybe $600, and maybe a little bit of taxes and insurance. But we can get the seller to literally pay for all your closing costs. So VA loans are great in most situations, but they're also great because it's a lower interest rate. Okay, you're going to pay least amount of interest. You also don't have a monthly mortgage insurance. Anytime you don't put 20% down in a mortgage, the lenders require a mortgage insurance, which is essentially to protect them against default.
That's called PMI, right? Hey, the caveat, but the caveat is to all the veterans out there, right? Doing that is you have to live there, correct?
Has to be your primary home. Great question. You can't buy a house as a rental. Get 100% financing. Lenders are very strict on that. You will sign a document that says, yes, I will occupy the house within 60 days of closing. Now, here's another point. Let's say you buy a house today. You close escrow, you live in the house. After 1 year, you can then decide to do something else. So you don't have to live there forever. You have to live there minimally for a year, and it has to be your primary home. Now, again, in a year from now, you can't say, I'm going to do a primary home purchase 3 streets over in a year from now. It doesn't work that way. Occupancy is one thing that a lot of lenders really look hard on, is because they're giving you a better interest rate, very low to out-of-pocket expense. And they want to make sure that you're going to use that home and live in it as your primary.
One more thing following up for veterans. Also, disabled veterans, right? Every situation's different.
Yep.
Every state is different. There's different opportunities I've heard that if you're a disabled veteran, like 50% over or up to 100%, or there's other options for them, right? And they should check with their local municipalities and their local lenders, correct?
Well, VA loans are pretty streamlined all across, it's going through the Veterans Administration. So at the end of the day, their guidelines are very, very set. If you have a 50% or higher disability percentage, you actually get a reduction in what's called the VA funding fee. Every VA loan that is done, there is a fee for doing it. It's typically, somewhere between 2.875 and like 3.25. Each time you use it, it gets a little bit more expensive. But long story short is this. So I'm a 60% disabled veteran. Typically on a $400,000 house, you'd be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of a $12,000 VA funding fee that's required. It's on every single loan. Doesn't matter where you live or, what your favorite football team is. Haha, go Niners. They actually waive that. So at the end of the day, that's a $12,000 savings for somebody that's disabled. So long story short, if you have a 50% or higher disability, you're a veteran and you're trying to buy a house, definitely talk to your lender about that VA funding fee because it will get waived. All you got to do is prove that you have that disability percentage. Great question.
Perfect. I appreciate it, Jared.
Hey, I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that wraps up this week's edition. We're going to be back next week. We just want to get this information out to you. Check out our channel. What is it? Check out our channel. Do our like, post. What is it? I think it's change your settings to get all of our alerts and things like that. So, with that being said, Brendan, do you have anything else for the fans?
No, we appreciate you guys, and then we'll be back next week.
All right. Thanks, sir. This is another edition of